everyone, welcome back to my virtual program, DIY Activities. My name is Maury and I'm one of the Recreation Therapy interns. You may also see me with Community Access at the Sabrata site. So, I wanted to also welcome you all to our Community Gatepath YouTube channel. If you haven't already, you can check out the other interns and instructors' YouTube videos, but you can watch that after you watch this fun video. This week's activity is DIY weaving. And DIY, if you don't remember, stands for do it yourself. This activity is a great activity to help us strengthen our fine motor skills. If you don't know what your fine motor skills are, they're pretty much the coordination of small muscles in movements with the synchronization of your hands and fingers with your eyes. So this is going to be a fun activity and it's going to require a lot of work, but not too much work, and it's just going to come out great. Okay, so these are all the materials that you're going to need for this DIY weaving activity. First, you're going to need several sheets of paper. I'm using paper that I just had lying around, and the back side is blank, so I'm going to use that. But you can also use construction paper, you can use cardboard, or if you have an empty cereal box, you can use the lining of the inside of that. Next, you're going to need some straws. I have plastic and I have paper. It doesn't matter which one you're going to use because we're going to cut it up later anyways. Next, you're going to need a glue stick or liquid glue, even a hot glue if you want to. It's really up to you. Next, you're going to need some yarn or twine. I have some twine here and some yarn. Yarn is really good for this activity because this will be great for the weaving. Next, you're going to need some colors. I'm using twistable crayons, but you can use crayons, markers, or color pencils, whatever your preference is, but it will add a little pizzazz to our activity. Next, you're going to need a black Sharpie. You can also use a random marker, and then you're going to need scissors. Okay, so we're going to start with step one, where step one is drawing the shapes. So you're going to take your piece of paper and your marker, and we're going to draw our first 4 shapes. So we're going to start with a square. We're going to label the square at the top half of the paper, and then we're going to draw the square pretty big, like so. Doesn't have to be a perfect square as long as you know and recognize this is a square. At the bottom half, you're going to draw a circle, and we're going to label it as a circle. It doesn't have to be perfect, it doesn't have to be super big, but big enough that you can cut it out later. Okay, that's our first set. Then on your second sheet of blank paper, you're going to do the other 2. So it's going to be a rectangle, and you're going to draw a rectangle, which is a square but wider. Okay. And then you're going to draw the triangle at the bottom. Start at the top, bottom, draw the base, and then connect. If it helps you as well, what you can do, instead of writing the triangle or the letters at the top, or words at the top, you can also write it in the middle, just so that you remember what shape you drew. Okay, so step 2, we're going to be coloring in our 4 shapes. So you're going to just choose any color of your choice. I'm going to be choosing blue, this really pretty aqua greenish color, pink, runaway crayons, and purple. So this step is super fun because you can just take any color and any shape and you're just going to color in your shape. You want to stay within the line, and remember those fine motor skills we were talking about? When you hold a pen, pencil, or any small objects, you're using your small muscles. So we're going to go ahead and just color. finish coloring your entire square, you're going to repeat that step for all of the rest of your shapes. And I'm going to have you zoom in a little bit closer so you can kind of see more of what I'm doing. Okay, so now I'm going to choose to take my blue crayon, or whatever color you decide, and I'm going to color in the circle the same way I color in the square. And if you're using marker, oftentimes if you're going to color over the words like we did in square, with crayon and color pencil it's fine, but with marker it might be a little tricky considering it might again overlap it. So what you want to do if you're using marker, you're going to want to color under the circle or the word of the circle, just so that you don't get rid of it. You still want to see the word. And then after that, you're good to go, and you're good to color the rest of the way. So we've already finished our square and our circle as I've shown you before. Now we're going to finish our rectangle and our triangle with the other two colors. So now we're going to use pink and aqua. I'm going to use aqua for the rectangle. And we're just going to color it in like we've done for the past few ones. So this is a great way for you to again strengthen your motor skills and the small muscles in your hands and your fingers, because you're holding the color pencil, the marker or pen or whatever you're using, and you're using it for, or holding it for an extended period of time until you finish. And this is why we made the shape kind of big, not only to give you more coloring time, but to give you that time to hold. You can always readjust if you feel a little uncomfortable. You can always take a break if your fingers are feeling kind of sore or they're hurting a little bit. You can always take your time. I'm just going to go ahead and continue coloring this in and color over. Hopefully you all are still doing activities at home or with your group home, or going outside and taking a nice walk, because you can go outside. It's nice to get a little breath of fresh air. I know that I try to do that here and there because being inside can be kind of rough, but that's okay because we have activities like these to pass time by. Okay, so if you don't want to do shapes or you don't want to learn about shapes, that's fine too. Another idea that you can do is writing your name. So it still works with the fine motor skills, but you can also practice writing your name. So I'm going to do community gate path. I'm not going to make it as big as I did the shapes, but enough where I will be able to weave my straws through later. For you all, you don't have to write community gate path. You can write your first name and your last name. You want something that is long, you can write a sentence or a phrase, and then you can outline it or draw a box over it so that it will help you with the weaving. So I'm going to show you how to do this in an alternative frame, but again, you can do your first name, your last name, put it in a box, and this will also be fun because you can color it in. So this is going to be a bigger color, but again, you want to take this time to really hold these pens in your hand for as long as you can. And it might help you in the long run. Hopefully it does, because you can always build upon your fine motor skills. open it. You can also give your hand a nice little massage if you're feeling kind of fatigued. I don't expect you all to just do this all in one sitting. You can do this in multiple sittings if you would like. But you want to give your hand a nice little massage, because it can take quite some time. Then you just go back to them. Okay, so for our next step, we're going to be taking our scissors and we're going to be cutting out our shapes. I'm going to show you what it looks like. So I already pre-cut out the circle. So you're going to cut the outer, the exterior of the circle or the shape that you did. So you don't want to cut where the black outline is. You want to cut just a little bit around that. And I'm going to show you that right now. So we're going to go ahead and cut the rectangle. It doesn't have to be a perfect cut, but enough where you can pretty much still see the outline. And if I didn't mention it before, I'm going to mention it now, but learning shapes and knowing your different shapes at any age is actually really important, because if you're going to the grocery store and you notice that a lot of the products are different shapes, some are circles, some are rectangles, some are squares, and that can actually be really helpful when you are storing or organizing the food at home. So you'll know what fits where, what shapes go with what, so that you can be a little bit more organized. So you're gonna cut it again just like this. You put it next to your other shape. Okay, so we're gonna just keep cutting around the triangle. You don't have to keep, the drawing or the ears that you did if you don't want to. I just like to do that for fun, to add a little, like I said, pizzazz and a little character to it. I'm just gonna chop these off, and you have your triangle. We're gonna put this to the side, and we're gonna go ahead and cut our square. If you remember in the runaway crayon. If you remember in the alternative frame or the other frame that we did the community gate path one, but in your case it might just be your name. You can just do the same step. And if you didn't know, using scissors is a great way to strengthen your fine motor skills. Now we're going to clean up this area and put everything else to the side. And we're going to focus the next frame on our shapes. So next you're going to select a straw. I like this green and white one, and it's a paper straw. It doesn't really matter, but I like this one particularly. You're going to take your scissors, and here's the fun part. We're going to be cutting our straws into tiny pieces to fit, again, these little lines. These lines don't have to be perfect, as I've mentioned or am mentioning, but they have to be about the size of what you're going to be cutting your straw to. So these are pretty small, as you can tell if you measure it up. They're pretty small, which is fine. So I'm going to do the best that I can to cut them as tiny as I can. And it's okay if your straws come out a little bit bigger or a little bit smaller, that's fine too. So you're just gonna cut your straw, and it'll come out looking like this. So you want both ends to be open, and it kind of looks like a cylinder, if y'all know what a cylinder looks like. It's pretty much just this tube looking shape. And we're going to do that until we have gotten enough straw cut out for the entire outline. We'll go ahead and just continue to do this. So before I continue, what you can do if you don't know how many straws you're going to need to cut out, you can always count how many lines you've made. And that's why I was saying earlier that it doesn't matter how big or small your lines are, as long as you have the outline. It might be helpful to do longer lines because then you would use less of the straw. But I like small ones because it'll help me practice with using scissors, because oftentimes I find myself not always using scissors appropriately or struggling to open the scissors as I'm demonstrating right here. And that's okay, but doing the straw cutting will help me practice that. And that's what I hope you all at home are doing as well to help you practice. Let's not grab this yet. So I'm gonna go ahead and count how many lines or straw cuts I'm going to need to make. So there's one. As you can tell, some are larger than others, and that's okay. Like I said, this DIY isn't always perfect. As long as you get the concept of it and you're doing it and you have the finished product that is as similar as it can be to mine, then you're perfectly fine. So we're going to now take our glue, and this is kind of the fun part that I like. We're going to take our glue, and then we're going to take a little bit of it and kind of just glide it across the outline. So you can do this little by little, you can do a whole thing, but then you go ahead and paste your straw down. So as I was saying in the beginning, you can kind of see that this straw takes up two. Let me hold it up. This straw takes up two of the lines, and that's fine. You can also use it as a guide. So when you put your second straw down, you're going to want to leave a little bit of room between the first straw and the second straw. And you want to keep doing that until you go all around. So you might not need as much straws, but you're going to need it if you're going to do at least 4 of the shapes as we had done earlier. So. And this is great because when we weave, it's going to provide us with a little bit of a challenge. So that'll be fun. This is what our finished product should look like. Okay, so now that you've seen this finished product, we're going to repeat the same steps for all 3 of our shapes. all 4 of your shapes. Okay, so now that you have all 4 of your shapes done, your circle, triangle, square, and rectangle, here's the fun part, and this is the whole DIY weaving. You're going to choose your yarn. I'm choosing this black kind of twine that I have. And you're going to choose your shape. Again, I'll start with a rectangle. And you're going to take your yarn or twine and outline how much you possibly will need. So you start from the corner to corner. You want to stretch it out. By stretching it out, you kind of get a more precise measurement. So you're going to go ahead and hold that at the next corner, measure that out. The next corner, measure that out. And then go to the last corner and measure that out. I always like to leave a little bit extra room in the case that I do need a little bit more yarn. So this is as much as I'm going to cut, taking my scissors and cutting. Okay, these for now because we'll work on it later. We're going to take our yarn or our twine, whatever you have, and you're going to start at a corner. I'm going to start at the right lower corner, and you're going to just weave the yarn through the circles, or like through the tubes of the straws. You can kind of see that some of them may be difficult, but that's okay. And that's why we leave space in the case that we have to pull it through to give it a little bit more, make it a little bit more easy for us. It's kind of like a snake going through. You might have to hold the straw down if your glue wasn't strong enough like I do, and that's fine too. You can straighten your yarn out while you're going through this process to make it a little bit more easy. You're going to take the tip of your yarn, try to get it through that inner tube, and then out. So you see the inside. You're going to take your yarn, get it through, and out the outside. Okay? And you're going to do this all across the border of the shape. If you have to bend it a little bit to get it through, that's fine. That is the purpose of this activity, to get the yarn through and to strengthen those muscles, so small muscles in your hands and fingers. Oh, one of them fell off. That's okay. I'm gonna glue it back on. We're going to weave it through. Oh. So even if it falls off, it's still inside the yarn, and that's fine. It works, because when you straighten it out, it's going to go back into the place that it was originally meant for. You have to pull it through part way. You're going to want to pull this through. We're going to have to glue this down later, but that's okay. To prevent the rest of your yarn from getting out of place, you might want to straighten or pull onto your yarn every few pieces that you weave through, just to give it that nice straightening effect. I'm going to repeat that, so hopefully you can mute that or something. So liquid glue might be better for this. As you can kind of see, this yarn is a little bit frayed. What you can do is take it and twist it together. Pinch and twist so that it gets coiled back. So it makes it a little bit easier for you to get through. And at the end, you can go ahead and tie your little string together. And there you go. It's not the perfect rectangle, but it works. Okay, so now that you have this done, you're going to repeat this step for the rest of your shapes. Run into little dilemmas, but that's okay because that's the fun thing about crafts. I'm gonna cut that piece off and then I'm gonna just tie it once. And there you go. And now your square is done. These are my extra glues. And there you have it. You have your shapes. And hopefully by now your fingers or your hands are not as sore as mine are, but that's how you know your muscles are working. Okay, so now that we finished our shapes, earlier I showed you all that if you didn't want to do shapes, you can do your name or you can do a one-worded phrase or anything. And this is how mine came out for the community gate path. There's a lot of straws that, as you can see, some of them are missing, but that's okay. So pretty much you're going to be repeating the same thing you would with the yarn for your name. The only thing I would suggest is just have one word. I made the mistake of doing two just because I wanted to show you all how it would look like, but I would start with your first name or your last name and not do both. Because if you do both, it might be a little hard, but if you like the challenge, this would be a great way to challenge yourself and really strengthen those fine motor skills. Again, I hope you enjoyed the activity and I hope that the small muscles in your hands and fingers feel stronger at the end of this video. Check back next week for another video from me. See you all next time in my virtual program.